Hello, and welcome to this interview from the Publish with Purpose series. And today I'm going to be speaking with our guest expert, Sarah Santacroce, and we're going to talk about her experiences with crowdfunding. Sarah, it's so great to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Thanks, Tara, for having me.
You're welcome. So, for those who aren't familiar with Sarah, here's a little bit about her. Over a decade of running a successful LinkedIn consulting business inspired a yearning in Sarah to create a global movement that encourages people to bring more empathy and kindness to business and marketing. As a hippie turned conscious business coach, Sarah has written 3 books, hosts the Humane Marketing podcast, and works with heart centered entrepreneurs to question their assumptions when it comes to marketing and give them permission to market their business their way, the gentle way. She also offers one-on-one conscious business coaching for forward-thinking change agents who want to create their life's work and contribute to make this world a better place. Sarah shares a fresh perspective and doesn't shy away from calling things out that no longer work for many of us when it comes to the current marketing model. Her clients sometimes refer to her as the female Seth Godin. So welcome, Sarah. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. It's
Yeah, thanks so much.
quite the moniker of the female Seth Godin. I imagine from.
Yeah, I put that in there because a couple of people who, got Seth's little blog post, they're like, "You sound exactly like him." I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not as he writes a blog post. I don't know if he still does, but he writes a blog post every day, or he used to. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm not writing that much, but yes, I do have similar opinions around marketing and business.
That's good. Yeah, I think one of the things I used to use LinkedIn a lot, like a decade ago, and I developed some courses around it and things like that. And that was back before the concept of social selling became so popular. And
Mm,
when social selling came along, it was suddenly just this platform where anybody who wanted to connect with you, even in their invitation to connect, were already trying to pitch you something. And it's like that's just so antithetical to me when it comes to how to use a platform like that. So it's
yeah, people kind of took the selling part, but they completely forgot the social part,
Mhm.
right? They're like,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
it went from being one of my favorite platforms to one that I rarely visit anymore, even though it's probably where I should spend more time because it's where more of
Mm.
my ideal clients would be. But
Yeah, I still like it if you have the right people in your network,
mhm,
because people go deeper in LinkedIn. And yes, there's probably quite a few authors on there compared to some of the more superficial
mhm.
platforms. But I personally think we're coming towards the end of an era with social media anyway. So it's time for, to look out for alternatives and different ways of building community. But
That sounds like a
yeah,
really interesting conversation, but it would
that's
be
a whole other
a huge
conversation.
tangent
Yeah.
to what we're going to talk about today. So
Yeah.
we'll save that
Yeah.
for another interview.
Yeah. Let's do
All
that.
right. So let me ask you, how did you get started working with books and with authors?
Mm. Um, I work with change makers. I work with deep thinkers who are really here on this planet to bring change, whether that is individual change, organizational change, systemic change. They just want to do good in the world and with their business. And so when back in 2019, when I came up with the 7 Ps of humane marketing and just a different approach of looking at marketing, starting from within and then going outwards, I created this program and people are like, Sarah, you gotta write a book about this. And I knew I always had a book in me, but I was like, well, first I want to create this program with you. I ran it like with 3 beta rounds and really trying to understand what people wanted, what they wanted to do differently with marketing. And so after having gone through the 3 beta rounds, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to write this book. And of course, you know what happened? It was 2020, and so I had lots of time to write this first book, Marketing Like We're Human. And then people told me, okay, people really love this first book, but they're like, Sarah, what about selling? What we really want is to sell. And so I followed up with Selling Like We're Human. So I wrote two books in pretty much 1 year, 1 year and a half. And so this experience obviously, teaches you a lot, self-publishing, and fitting with today's conversation, I crowdfunded the first book on Kickstarter. And so then when it became time to start the third book, Business Like We're Human, the one I'm publishing now, I was like, I don't want to do this alone anymore. I don't want to write a book in isolation. I want to do it with others. And since I had gone through the exercise of writing a book, and I'm pretty structured and, have created tons of other courses, I'm like, well, I'm going to build a course around it. And then I'm going to see if there's a bunch of authors who want to write it with me while I am writing my book. I'm teaching them. I created a hybrid program basically where a part of it was recorded, so the how to, and then we met in a group session once per week to talk about, well, what does it take, what are the topics, etc. And so then we actually continued to meet for a whole year. And one of the members, she has a chapter in a book with multiple authors, and one of the other one is getting close to finishing her book. So yeah, it's just been wonderful to do this together and feel like, okay, we're all change makers, and we can do this not in isolation, but in a small group.
Mhm. That sounds great. I know so often when many writers deal with that sense of isolation, and they're finding that, coffee chats and things like that, where they can do a virtual session where they're writing together at the same time. They're connected because, they're online with someone, but still having that regimen of, all right, this is the time we've set aside to write, and having that community as well is can be very
Exactly.
encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with it, can you kind of explain exactly what crowdfunding is?
Yeah, we had a little conversation before we went live. So, the way I understand crowdfunding is that you basically raise funds together with a community, uh, and it's usually around a project. And usually around a creative project. So Kickstarter, for example, is really famous for games, board games. They have a lot of board games. They have books, video games, any kind of creative project. But there's also other things on there, but those are the ones that stand out for me. And so on Kickstarter specifically, you basically commit to this project and of course the person behind it and say, yes, I want you to build this thing or write this book or whatever it is. And I therefore commit financially and I get something in return. So you get one of the offers, one of the perks that the crowdfunder submits in this Kickstarter project. And there's different levels, you can have levels from like $5 to up to 500 and 5,000 bucks. It's all up to the person who sets up the crowdfunding. So to me, it really is a community that you're trying to build around your creative project. That's what it is to me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's my understanding of it as well. And it really, there's a lot that goes into building a community, just like any other community you might try and build. So there needs to be some planning and some strategy behind that.
Right.
So, you successfully crowdfunded your first book on Kickstarter, and now you're running a second campaign independently from your own site. What led you to choose crowdfunding as part of your publishing strategy in the first place?
Yeah, it was really this community aspect. And Marketing Like We're Human is a book that is like a mini revolution. So it's like a book on how to do marketing differently, on questioning all our assumptions around marketing. And so it had to also be launched differently. Because if I would have just come out with the same old book launch, it it didn't give you this feeling of we're doing this differently in community. And
Mhm.
so that's why I went with Kickstarter. And since it was my first crowdfunding, well, that was, I wouldn't have known back then how to do it on my own. And so I really had to go through the motions of setting it up on Kickstarter. Of course, first, joining a few other projects and seeing what they were doing. It was a big learning process on how to how to understand, or yeah, understanding how these things are set up, what's successful, what's not, because the risk on Kickstarter, and that then explains why I'm doing it differently, is quite big because it's a all or nothing kind of deal with Kickstarter. So either you basically you set a goal and you either reach it or you don't. And when you don't, well, you get nothing, right? And
Mhm.
so it's quite the yeah, it's a stressful time. And then you set up how much time you want to give yourself. I think back then I gave myself a month, but still, it's a lot of promotion, a lot of following up with everybody,
And a lot of
and
press, I'm
you,
sure.
yeah, and you don't know. Like I actually set the goal too low. I'm always a bit, humble, and I'm like, I don't know how much I'm gonna get. And so I reached the goal within 3 days. I'm like, could have done more, but you don't know what to expect. So
At
yeah,
the same time,
that's
you're
the
not
reason.
penalized for setting a low goal. And some people use that as the strategy to make sure that they do get some funds. Uh,
Funding, yeah,
so you can
exactly. Yeah.
raise more
So
than
that's
your
why
goal.
I was like, well, I'll feel better to at least have reached it and get that. But then, of course, it's once you've reached a goal, it's mentally for people, it's like, oh, she's done. It's not like they're going to give you more usually, or not much more.
Okay. All right. I mean, there's nothing the site doesn't prohibit you from raising more. You're talking more about the
No.
psychology of contributing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Um, so for this new campaign, why did you decide to host it on your own site instead of using a platform like Kickstarter again?
Yeah. Well, exactly for those reasons, because I was like, I had memories of feeling very stressed about this, this goal that was set by well, it was set by me, but then like Kickstarter is quite pushy to have you reach this goal,
Mhm.
and it does not align with the rest of my marketing where I'm all about not being pushy. And so it just kind of like felt that Kickstarter is using their users to create, momentum and create urgency.
Mhm.
So that part didn't feel good. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do it more in a more humane way on my own site. And the other thing when I chose Kickstarter, I always tell my clients, tap into existing audiences where people already are, right? I can do it on my site now because I already, have a certain audience. But when I recommended Kickstarter to a client of mine, it was also because Kickstarter has an audience.
Mhm.
Turns out that actually, when I looked at all the backers that I did get, there was only a small percentage of the people that didn't know about my work and came from Kickstarter. You can get lucky and you get like picked by, the whatever the jury on Kickstarter, and then yes, you'll be on the f first page, and yes, you get tons of visibility, but didn't happen to me. And so I'm like, well, out of I don't know how many backers, I only got 10% from the site. Yeah, I can do it on my own this time.
Yeah, I think the other benefit that many people might see if they know that they can drive their own traffic to the campaign is that any other platform you use has fees that they take out, and
Yes,
for some of them it can be very substantial. I know one
right.
of them was last time I looked, and this was a few years ago, was up to 30% of your money raised, they take as fees.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I know you're in Switzerland, but here in the US, the money you raise is actually taxed as well. So you need to make
yeah,
You set aside money to go towards taxes, so it's not
Right.
like all of the money you get from the campaign goes to your project. It
Right.
goes to a bunch of little pockets before, comes
Before
what's
you
left
get
over
it.
comes to
Yeah.
you. Um,
Yeah. That for sure is another benefit of just hosting it yourself. Again, just depends how you're set up, right? If you're already set up, you have, experience with setting up a shopping cart and all of that, then yeah, it's totally doable. But if you're a first-time author and yeah, this all seems a bit overwhelming, then you're probably still better off on a crowdfunding platform.
Now, one of the things that I do like about crowdfunding platforms, and I'm curious what you think, is as much as you've said that you don't like having the goal because it creates this concept of, oh, well, she's already reached it. But if you're using the same thing on your own website, you could always change what the goal is along the way as you're getting close to it. I think
Right.
psychologically, there's something very incentivizing as a potential contributor to go and see that, oh, she's within 10% of her goal. My contribution is going to make a difference.
That's true.
Whereas if there's nothing there and you have no clue how close the campaign is to reaching its goal, there's less drive to be a part of it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, are you going to do anything to kind of give a status update on where you stand with your goal?
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, the way I look at it, I I really am actually not so much goal driven
Mhm,
than I am, message driven. And so in a way, the people who will want to support this crowdfunding slash fundraiser is people who believe in the message of the
mhm,
book, right? And and I think it doesn't really matter so much to them whether there is a goal attached or not. It's more like I know Sarah's work. Maybe I've read the other books, or just the title of the book, Business Like We're Human. That sounds like the book that needs to be published right now.
mhm,
So but I hear you. I totally hear you. And yes, I will send out, updates. Here's how much we have raised, but not so much with here's how much we're missing to reach the goal. But just like, here's what we can do together in a community. And I'm also giving back 10% to a project in Ghana, Africa. So just helping them see what we can do in a
mhm,
community to, yeah, kind of celebrate
mhm.
that without necessarily having a specific goal.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way to one recommendation that I would have for anybody considering doing a crowdfunding campaign is to really understand the psychology of your audience, who you're trying to reach. Because you do have some folks that are message driven, some that are community driven, some that are goal driven. And so understanding kind of who your audience is and what they value most will help you decide the best way of hosting your campaign, whether that's on one of the traditional crowdfunding sites or doing it on your own as you're doing.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So
Totally agree
crowdfunding
with
can
that.
seem overwhelming for many authors. How early did you start your planning and what were some of the first steps that you took?
So on Kickstarter, like I said, the first thing was like really learning to understand the platform, uh, going through a bunch of other projects and fund and helping to fund them, seeing all the messaging that I received. Um, on Kickstarter itself, I remember filming the video for the project. Took me like forever. Um, so yeah, just setting up the whole campaign took, I think, a lot longer than what I'm doing now on my website. Because yeah, it really is like this whole backwards planning of, well, how am I going to get to this goal? What kind of different perks am I giving away? But also realizing, A, I'm in Switzerland, and so I don't want to deal with any kind of shipping or anything uh, yeah, physical. So it had to be all digital. All the perks had to be digital. And it's the same this time. So just kind of brainstorming, well, what can I give? that I already have? Of course, yes, the book, but are there other things that I already have that are digitals that I can then, deliver in a digital way?
Sweeten the
So
pot. Yeah.
yeah, probably about 6 months, I would say, if you're asking about time.
Mhm. Yeah, I noticed when I was working with authors doing crowdfunding previously that a lot of times the first thing they think about is an autographed book, but they don't think about, the aspects of having to ship that. And they may
Right.
offer an autographed book for 15 or $20 and, not really do the calculation to figure out, well, between my print costs, my shipping
Mm.
costs, and oftentimes it's shipping twice because it's once to get the printed book to you so you can autograph it and then you shipping it on to the recipient. And it's like $20 doesn't cover that when dealing with
Yes,
things. So
you
you don't
don't
want
end
to
up with
as a
much at
whole.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to creating the rewards or perks for backers, what advice do you have for authors who are trying to design ones that feel valuable but manageable? Of course, first is the digital, but what else might you encourage them to consider?
Yeah. So tap into things you already have. So whether you have maybe online courses that fit with the message of the book, or you can create a series of workshops as well. That's what I'm doing with this crowdfunding is basically the main perk is they get access to the ebook, the audiobook, which I've already recorded. So that's kind of a nice one because usually what you see with launches is that the audiobook comes last. So I'm taking the audiobook first. So people hopefully are really like, already listening to the book and then coming to 4 workshops that I'm calling conversations for change that are around the topics of the book, the 4 parts of the book. So creating something new that is yeah, something that is digital, or tapping into things that you already have sitting on your website and on your drive that you can easily either put into digital format or just give them access to that yeah, online programs and things like that.
Yeah, another thing that I would add to that I've done with launches before too is tapping into your community to find out what bonuses or additional materials might they be willing to contribute in order to
Mm,
support your campaign. Because a lot
mm,
of times their notoriety or their name recognition may make a higher level perk be something that is very appealing to folks who may not know you quite as well, but they're willing to because of name recognition of somebody else. And so sometimes
yeah, that's a great idea.
using
Hmm.
that as a way to kind of build out your perks can be very helpful.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. All right. So what tools or resources have you found most helpful in running your crowdfunding campaigns?
Well, the Kickstarter website itself has a lot of information. There's a whole community around it. Obviously, just any kind of video that you find on YouTube. Um, there, yeah, I should have looked at that. There was this website where you could kind of get stats on the Kickstarter campaign.
Hmm.
I'll find it and I'll send it to you. You can put it in the
Okay.
links.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just anything that is, helping you understand how this crowdfunding really works. And then for this time that I'm doing it on my own site, it's just, you have to have your shopping carts, you have to have a website where you can add the emails and just like the usual online business setup
Mhm.
that then delivers the book and the audiobook, etc.
So I am curious, and this isn't a question we prepared, so if it's not pertinent, that's fine, just say so. But have you used AI at all into getting a better understanding of your audience and what they might value for the perks?
Yeah, that's a good point. No, I haven't. What I've done is I've beta tested those conversations for change with my own community.
Okay.
And so running those workshops and then getting testimonials from people who went through it, I think that shows that this is not just something that I'm running for the first time, but it always helps to have testimonials from people to say, yeah, this is amazing. You have to, get into this. So that's how I kind of tested it, if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't done a crowdfunding campaign since before AI became so easily available for everyone. But one of the things that I do enjoy doing with AI is really getting a deeper insight and understanding to a target demographic. So
Yeah.
if I share, kind of what I'm trying to do and ask for insights into the mindset of these folks, it can help me target the language that I'm using when I write campaign information or when I send out emails, so that I make sure that I'm not missing something that I thought I knew, but it just in some ways
Yeah.
is validation
It's
of
very smart. I
where you
like
think
it.
you're going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
crowdfunding often requires authors to market their books before they're even published. How did you approach building excitement and trust with your audience ahead of the campaign?
I'm gonna address the first book because this one is the third, and it's a series, and so there's already kind of like
Mhm.
excitement because I people know the doing things like we're human tagline. So for the first book, I think what helped is that I ran the program with the same title, Marketing Like We're Human. And so it was like me constantly talking about this idea of doing marketing like we're human, and then, kind of like dropping seeds here and there. Well, there's a book that's going to be coming, and there's a Kickstarter campaign. And then what, as one of the perks in that Kickstarter campaign, I actually launched a Humane marketing community. It gave people access to 1 year, so they were kind of like founding members of the humane marketing community. And so it was just kind of like an ongoing thing where people bought into this message of doing marketing like we're human. Yeah.
It's interesting. Were there any unexpected challenges you ran into during either your Kickstarter campaign or this independent one? And if so, how did you handle them?
I just remember the stress, how stressful it was. Yeah, like I said, I reached the goal within 3 days, so it was really only those 3 days. But yeah, just like all the bits and pieces for this Kickstarter campaign was quite stressful. And what other challenges did I encounter? It was a bit clunky to get people's emails into my list. So Kickstarter owns all the data. And so then yes, they tell you can download it, but then you have to import it. And so that whole, I didn't have to send anything, luckily, as we discussed, but it was still like, oh, I had to make sure that these people got this perk and these people got this perk. So the whole sales process or the shipping process, even digitally, was a bit clunky in my opinion because you could do parts of it on Kickstarter, but other parts I had to do via email. So yeah, I found that bit a bit clunky. So now, since I'm doing it on my own platform, it's very easy. It's just like a purchase, and then they get whatever they buy in the confirmation email. So I find it easier for the um, yeah, the after sale. Also staying in touch with people is easier because they immediately get added to my email list.
Mhm.
And so it's just easier to stay in touch. It's not on a separate platform. It's all on my platform on Kajabi.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with a separate platform, you have to either be managing migrating that information manually, or you need to have somebody who really understands automation engineering to be able to, do that in a way that is hands off it happens automatically, but sometimes the know-how and skill to set up those automations can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So many authors worry about what happens after the crowdfunding campaign ends. How did you think about fulfillment, ongoing sales, and building long-term relationships with your supporters?
Yeah, well, fulfillment we just talked about, and so the nice thing with this campaign is that they are added to, my list, and well, there will be an ongoing conversation because we have those 4 dates in June with the Conversations for Change workshop, and I'm really counting on that on those meaningful conversations because we're all so distracted. We buy books and then never read them. Um, if people do show up, and I know very well, only a small percentage of the people who buy will also show up. But the people who do show up for at least one of these conversations, I know that it will change them. And so I think that's where this human conversation happens, and those are the people who are then also more drawn to recommend the book to someone else because they haven't just read it, they have lived it with others. There's going to be breakout rooms. They're going to experience it in a different way, and I think that's what makes this launch different from some of the other launches I've seen, is that I want people to live this book, experience it, and not just read it or, not even like just put it on their desk and not read it. So that's the
It's
difference.
pretty paperweight. Yeah, and I think that that kind of engagement is really important. I have something that I do that you're familiar with, the Art of Self-Editing Challenge, and a lot of that content could just be a course. But the primary value that everybody sees in it is actually that time spent with me and
Yeah, for
learning it
sure.
one-on-one. And
Yeah.
it's a totally different perceived value if it's just information that is pre-recorded and you never engage with me. So when you can think about with the book launch, how can you create that kind of engagement in the conversations? I'm curious, do you do anything with setting up any kind of a nurture sequence for people who enter your list this way so that they have a series of emails that are coming automated, but they're still very personable and they're prompting engagement?
So for those who are entering the fundraiser, you're saying?
Mhm.
They will get a series of emails to mainly encourage them to then show up for these conversations, right?
Mhm.
And so from there, yes, there will be other emails that will then hopefully make them decide to join the community because they see uh, in those conversations the power of being in community. So yeah, it's a whole nurturing, like you say, but also just, talking to the right kind of people and
Mhm.
seeing what comes out of that.
Okay, great. What would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions authors have about crowdfunding their books?
Well, I don't know if they're misconceptions, but I guess, like you said, they can seem very overwhelming, these crowdfunding things, and people feel like, well, do I have the technical skills? And is it really worth it? Why would I do that? Why not just launch the book and, be done with that? So I guess maybe a misconception is that it's just about the money. It's just to help you raise the funds,
Mhm.
and underestimating the community aspect of this. I think that's one of the misconceptions. It's like, well, this is just to help me raise money. Um, that's not what this is about for me. Yes, that too, but it's about creating something together, creating a movement around the book.
Mhm.
Because a book today is like information. There's tons of books out there. If you really want your book to be well received and create a movement around it, then you can't just launch it like all the other launches. You have to, yeah, come up with different ideas.
Mhm. Yeah, and I found personally sometimes what I do consider to be a misconception is the goal setting that you and I talked about earlier, the finances of it. What is a good goal to set? And oftentimes, I know if somebody's doing crowdfunding in order to work, say, with a hybrid publisher like Emerald Lake Books, they think about, well, what is the fee to work with Emerald Lake Books? And that becomes their goal. But they don't think about the fact that there are taxes taken out, there are fees taken out. So, say it's, 8,000 to publish with us, that's what they're targeting, when in fact they need to account for those additional fees so that the net they end up with is the 8,000 after delivering perks, after everything else. And you have to think too about, is there support that you need to hire in order to handle the fulfillment? Are you going to have an admin do a lot of the administrative stuff in the background? Or are you going to hire an automation engineer to make the connection between the crowdfunding platform and your own
Mm.
systems? And so you really need to sit down and figure out your budget and what you
Right.
really need as net in the end, and set your goal based on that. I
Yeah.
do know that a lot of the crowdfunding platforms, they give you an option of you get the money if you meet your goal, or you can, for I think it's a higher fee structure, you can get whatever you raise. And so you
Mm.
actually aren't getting quite as much that way, because of a higher fee, but you're going to get money regardless. Um, so all stuff to be aware of, and just kind of make sure that you understand all of the implications of the platform
Yeah.
choice you make.
There's so many decisions to be made, right?
There
Yeah.
certainly are.
Mm.
If you could give one piece of encouragement to an author thinking about crowdfunding their book, what would it be?
Um, yeah, it's to really make it easy for yourself and not go with like anything that needs a lot of, fulfillment afterwards. So make sure you set up those perks in a way that is easy for you to deliver. So that would be the first one. Um, and the second one is, in order for a crowdfunding or fundraiser to succeed, I think you already have to have a certain network of connections that you've been nurturing over time. What I sometimes see is like people, don't get in touch with me. Like I haven't heard from them in years. And then they reach out to me and say, can you help me fund this thing? That doesn't feel so good, right? Because it feels like, well, where have you been, in recent times? So that whole, I call it in the book, I actually call it a authentic relationship culture, to just nurture those relationships that if you're going to go and ask for something, well, you have to have given beforehand, right? And so understanding that people are not just out there wanting to give people money that they don't care about.
Mhm.
There is a certain amount of giving before asking for money and support.
Yeah, it's funny. I share a story when I talk about my book, Published with Purpose, that I was speaking at a conference, and it was going to be on April 24th of 2019. And on February 1st, I decided I wanted to have a book in hand for that conference. And because I have always been one to try and network and get to know people, and without any thought of, how I might it, how I might benefit from that connection. It's just I authentically want to get to know people and see
Right.
if there are synergies, and work from there. And because that was always the way I had done things, when I did sit down to write word one on February 1st for the book, I was able to have it professionally edited, professionally designed, have endorsements, have a forward, all within that time frame, and have books in hand for the
Wow.
conference in less than 90 days, simply because I had that social collateral already built. People
Yeah.
knew who I was. They understood what my goal was and what my purpose was, for what I was trying to do. I had already supported them in things that they were doing. It used to be when I spent time on LinkedIn, it was specifically to find people that I could just have a conversation with, just get to know, even if it was just a half-hour call. What are you doing? What are you interested in? What do you like? And I know you and I have benefited from getting to know one another over the past year or two, because we started out just with a conversation of, hey, tell me about yourself, you know?
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think doing that is important.
Yeah.
And so when
Yeah,
you,
it takes time to build those
it
relationships.
does.
And so the ask for, and it's a small ask, doesn't come as like something that is almost offensive. It
Mm,
comes as, of course, I want to help you, right? So
yep.
that's the kind of feeling that you want to, yeah, portray in that crowdfunding.
Mhm. And that's how we got to this interview today. I mean, when you've supported my Art of Self-Editing challenge multiple times in the past, so when you wrote and asked to support your crowdfunding campaign, it was like, yeah, but let me do more than just share a link. Let me, let's talk about it. Let's get more information out of there. Because
Yeah,
I think that's kind of how you benefit the most is not just by my sharing a link to people who don't know who you are in my audience. It's let me introduce you to them, give them
yeah,
an opportunity to get to know you and what motivates you and what the origin is behind the crowdfunding campaign that you're going to be doing and that I'm promoting, because that's how you create kind of the authentic connection that makes people want to be involved.
exactly. And it goes to show again that information alone it doesn't do it anymore, right? It's the human connection and the yeah, seeing us having this conversation that is much more valuable than just an email with a link. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we've missed when it comes to crowdfunding?
Let me check. I have some notes as well. Um, yeah, one one thing I think, well, we kind of touched upon it just now. People actually feel really good about helping others, especially others who they feel like over the years have helped them. In our case, yeah, we have done that in the past. We have helped people with our content, with my podcast, with all these things that I'm always doing for free. And so people feel good about helping. And so understanding that and yeah, being open to receive is not always easy for us, heart-centered entrepreneurs. But coming with this project and saying, I'm open to receive, and I feel like, yes, I welcome the help. I think that's a nice kind of growing into as well, and just understanding that there's power in that.
And I think too, there's power in being aware enough. I was going to say mature enough, but aware enough to say I need help, and who in my network can I reach out to who might be willing and able to help me? Uh,
Right.
so often as entrepreneurs, I think especially as women entrepreneurs, we tend to think we have to do it all on our own, and
Yeah.
that's not the case at all. Um,
Yeah.
it really is about building these authentic connections and letting people know when you need help with something.
Yeah, exactly. And that again is built over the years. That transparency and honesty is built over the years. And so you just know that people will trust you with this. I think that's what it comes down to as well.
Mhm, mhm. Trust is really, really important.
Yeah.
So what is the best way for people to connect with you if they want to follow up with you?
Yeah. Well, it would be a bit selfish, but I'll mention it anyway. If they want to join this fundraiser, they can go to humane.marketing/conversations for change. And you will also put the link in the show notes. And then humane.marketing is my main website, and I am mainly visible on LinkedIn and available on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect there, you can. And yeah, would love to see you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sarah, for the conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to jog my memory of what it was during Kickstarter and seeing now, well, how am I doing this differently? So thanks
Mhm.
for having me.
Okay, wonderful. And that is it for today's interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Bye.